Welcome to Coastal Voices, the show that brings you stories about life on Hatteras Island. This is Susan West, your host for the evening. The stories you'll hear tonight capture the spirit of people from Rodanthe to Hatteras Village. The storytellers come from all walks of life, and topics include everything from childhood memories to fish tales, community traditions to big storms, hard work to daring adventures. The stories are from recordings collected by local volunteers in the Coastal Voices Oral History Project. You'll meet some of those volunteers in the show tonight. To learn more about the project, please visit our website at carolinacoastalvoices.com.
In an interview with Liz Browning Fox in March 2013, Calvin Dallas Burrows Jr. remembered playing with his cousin Steve in the Hatteras Marsh and hearing about the dead body down at the docks.
The only thing I was interested in then is going down to the creek, down to the ice house, and going through the marsh over there to see Steve. Most of the time they had a road you could go all around, but we always cut right across the marsh. We had some good times. I remember one time Steve come over. We were sitting there playing, and he said, let's go get some candy. I said, how you going to get some candy? You ain't got no money. He says, I'll charge it to Dad. All right, he called him Dad. He might have called him something else. And we went to Dan Oden's store. It was only a hop, skip, and a jump from where we lived. And he bought about 5 or 6 bars of candy, charged it to his daddy. And of course we ate it, got sicker than a dog, too much candy. But I don't know what kind of scolding he got after it was over, but I'm sure they said something when they saw it on the bill. I remember a time down to the docks where they said, somebody's brought in a body. And they hung him on a pole until they called the authorities, you know. And I think his name was Bruno. That's what they called him anyway. They must have known somebody drowned it out that way. And I remember after that, because he was caught in a pound net, they quit eating fish for a while.
I bet they did.
Caused quite a ruckus around there.
Why'd they put him on a pole?
Well, they just took him out of the boat and hung him up on there instead of... That's what I heard. Right? That's what they wouldn't let nobody, the kids, go down there and look anyway. But that was a story I got from my dad.
Was he wasn't somebody local?
I don't think so. I think he was a fisherman or something, and he fell overboard, or he'd been missing a while.
Yeah, it would kind of send you off fish for a little bit.
Yeah, sure would. Crabs too.
Especially
crabs will eat you.
Connie Pharaoh of Buxton talks about working on the Diamond Shoals lightship. Mr. Pharaoh was interviewed in 1988 by Amy Glass for the Southern Oral History Program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Sunk this lightship off here, the Germans did. That was in World War I, though.
Was that the Diamond Shoals lightship?
Yeah, right. You ever see a lightship?
Seen pictures of them.
Yeah, I got a picture of the one I put 7 years on one.
You were on a lightship?
Yeah.
Where was that?
Diamond Shoals out here.
Oh,
right
yeah.
off here.
And what years were that? Was that in the Coast Guard?
Civil Service then.
That was in the Civil Service?
Yeah.
On the lightship.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know I've never met anybody who was on a lightship. I wonder if you could tell me what that was like.
That was rough going.
Was it?
Oh, boy. I seen it down out there one time for 72 hours. We never sit down to the table to eat. Rough weather. Oh, gracious, yes. That it was.
When was that? Was that in the winter time?
No, in summertime, hurricane season. I was out there in one hurricane, 115 miles an hour.
What did you do?
Just held on. That was about all you could do. The old man, the skipper, he called us all in the wheelhouse at 2 o'clock in the morning. Said if we go down, we'll all be together. Wasn't nothing out but sometime but the smokestack. That's the truth. That thing was just covered up in water. See, so heavy.
So you'd be underneath the deck.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was on Diamond for 7 years.
Now, during that period, would you serve out there for a certain amount of time?
60 days out there and 30 days ashore. Yep, 60 days out and 30 in.
Well, you had plenty of supplies out there?
Oh, yeah, we used to get supplies twice a month, food.
How many men were out on the ship?
During peacetime, 17 was the crew. There was 17 in the crew. The skipper, first officer, mate, chief engineer, assistant engineer, 3 firemen, 5 seamen, and the cook, and the radio operator. 17 all told, I think.
And which position did you have?
I was ship's cook.
What kind of communications did you have on the ship?
Nothing but radio.
Did you ever get a newspaper or magazines or anything?
Sometimes we'd get newspapers coming from Baltimore. The merchant marine would come by sometime and throw us a bundle of newspapers overboard, so we had to go pick them up. We used to get a lot of fruit coming from south.
Oh, yeah?
Those fruiters would throw bananas and grapefruit, oranges, and all kind of fruit over.
No kidding.
Yeah, we'd have to lower the boat and go pick it up.
Uh-huh.
I seen high as a dozen, 15 bananas hanging out in the gangway at the time.
So they'd throw it over in a box and you'd take it?
No, they'd just put it right overboard just like it was. A bunch of bananas are floats, you know, stuff like that.
So they would throw the fruit out onto the ocean?
Yeah. We'd pick it up.
Mary Gray of Avon talks about hurricanes and the schooner, the G.A. Kohler, coming ashore in 1933. Amy Glass conducted the interview in 1988 for the Southern Oral History program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
There was one in the 30s that does. The water came in the houses. But that's about the only one. We were away in 44 when the big one came. And this was one of 12 houses that wasn't damaged, real damaged by the storm. In that 44 hurricane. Mm-hmm. The water came in one part. It's just been as far as storms are concerned, it's been a life of building and tearing down.
First hear about it.
Well, a ship came ashore then, up there. I forgot the name of her, somewhere up there between Little Kinnikeet and Salvo.
Is it Kohler? G.A. Kohler?
Yeah, it was the Kohler. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the time.
Did you go up and see that ship?
Yes, yeah. In fact, my mother got some furniture off it, and she kept it for years, and it was mahogany chairs, and it was nice furniture.
It was a beautiful ship.
It must have been furnished real nice. Mm-hmm. Well, in those days, we didn't have warnings like we have now. It just some of the old people in the community saw it coming. There's always been some old fishermen around that could look at the sky and tell what was going to happen. So I guess that's the way we were warned.
Loretta O'Neal Buxton talks about her grandfather, Christopher Midget, who was the cook at the Cape Point Coast Guard station.
Yeah, in 1935, my mom and I moved back to Buxton.
Okay.
And we lived in this yellow house over here, which was my grandfather, Christopher Midget's house, my dad's father's home. And
so both of your parents were from Buxton?
yes, they were.
Okay.
My grandfather, Christopher, was cook for the Cape Point Coast Guard station for many, many years.
Oh, okay.
And when I was just a little tyke from the age of about 6, I used to ride out early mornings with him to the Coast Guard station. I would sit on the steps and play with shells while he cooked their breakfast and lunch. And I remember so well this gentleman from Avon, a Mr. Gray, would sit by me sometimes, and he would tell me what the shells represented. Like there was a Scotch bonnet and a shell they called the pig, and the starfish, the devil's pocketbook.
Where was the Coast Guard
It
station?
was right out on the point, Cape Point.
Oh, it
right
was?
on the point then.
Okay, out on the beach.
Yeah, right on the beach,
Okay.
yeah. And we got out there by horse and cart.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so we'd in their cars. We'd go up a causeway, right out to the beach, get on the bank of the beach, and then cruise right down to the station.
Did your grandfather own the horse? Did he?
Oh, yes, he owned his own horse. His horse's name was Jim.
Jim?
I know besides cooking for the Coast Guard, my grandfather cut net steaks a lot.
Okay.
And sold them and used them. He fished a lot himself. And Susan, one of the most wonderful, wonderful memories is when I was about 7, 8 years old. My granddaddy and he would take a little tin bucket and fill it with the biscuits and fish or whatever was left over from supper the night before and breakfast that morning. Put it in this little tin bucket. And he and I would hitch up the horse to the cart, and we would leave his house and go straight through the woods all the way over to the bank of the beach. He had a camp. He had tunneled a sand dune.
He built a camp over
He
there.
built like a tunnel camp. Anyhow, he had what they called a dory. You know,
Okay.
a boat, you know what
Uh-huh.
that is. He would go out in the ocean in his dory with his nets and set his nets. I would stay up there. I wasn't allowed to go in the camp by myself because he didn't want it to cave in maybe or something.
Right.
I was to sit in the shade of the opening of it and shells again. I always collected shells and played with shells.
Uh-huh.
And that is one of the most wonderful memories because he was just a little man. He was only about, probably about 5, 8.5.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't a big man.
Uh-huh.
And then after he would fish, we'd stay just about the day. And after he would fish his nets, if he caught something, he'd have the bucket and get them in the bucket. And here we'd head back for home.
George Pratt, who lives in Buxton, North Carolina, discusses using his kayak to fish for trout. He was interviewed by Sandy Jones Garrison on June 16, 2014.
I fish, but not as much as I did in the past. I'm getting old and it's harder to walk out to the point every day. I like to kayak and the sound and fish. I don't like kayaking that much, but I like to fish, and the kayak gives you access. I like to go out in the kayak and then wade the flats and fish for trout and whatever's there available. I usually go out north of Buxton, either go to Kite Point or one of those locations. So the first turnout as you leave Buxton, going up north, is a large hole there that was like a borrow pit where they borrowed sand to fill in the inlet that opened up north of Buxton. So it's relatively deep water, and a lot of small trout, not big. I mean, occasionally you catch a nice drum or a larger trout there.
Anderson Midget talks about growing up in Rodanthe, trading clams for potatoes, and traveling on the ferry at Oregon Inlet. Amy Glass interviewed Mr. Midget in 1988 for the Southern Oral History program. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Oh, it was a great place to grow up because there was plenty of fishing and crabbing and swimming, and We played a lot of ball in the summer, and you know, there was a lot, right much to do. Of course, all of us worked. We had a little garden, and we had a little store there that my dad had built, and we started when I was about 9-year-old, so I had plenty of little jobs to do. He started the store for us boys, really, kids. So we run the store. He just helped us build it, and we all built it together and started a little store. And of course, my mom really ran the biggest part of it. Just a small grocery store and a dry goods store. It was really somewhere in the neighborhood of 33. We were all poor, but we didn't know it down there. Everybody had plenty to eat. They had, we didn't realize it was depression. Didn't have any electricity, no roads. Didn't have to buy much gas, and you lived off of the land, so you didn't realize it. Depression really didn't. We didn't remember only what we read about it, and well, it was just a small store, and very small, and had the flour and lard and butter and the bacon and beans, so to say, for the people in the village that they purchased from. So we used to catch clams and go up in Currituck as kids and trade them off for sweet potatoes and orange potatoes. But I can remember very much as a young boy taking clams up to Nag's Head to the First Connolly Inn, which are getting ready to move now.
Yeah.
Used to belong to a fellow Midget. He built that, Neela's Midget. And we would take our small clams and save them for him. The ones were about the size of 50-cent piece. And he would give us, like, we would give him 100 of them for 50 cents. But when we could sell our clams to him, because that was high price, you know, a lot of times you could take 1,000 clams to make $1, you know, back those days. So that was he gave us a good price for them back then. Actually, there was a little ferry running at Organelli, and we used to go up in there, up and cross the ferry at Organelli. And that was probably when I was about 12, 13. One of the boys that we were used to clam with, well, he had a old Model A Ford, and we'd take them in that and go up to Nag's Head, and up Currituck, which was a big thing for us, because to get off of the island, you know.
Where did you drive?
Oh, you drove the beaches. You didn't have any roads, you know. Now, they had roads on Nag's Head at that time, but they didn't have any at all on Hatteras Island. We would drive the low water as much as possible. Of course, we could always, you learnt to drive in the sand, so you could get through anyway, anytime. Just a matter of slacking your tires and struggling a little harder. That was a private ferry. They had the old Barcelona. That was Toby Tillett who ran that ferry. Him mostly, in my recalling them, was Toby Tillett and Pam Gallup. They were both one-cheese fellas. He had a small ferry named the New Inlet, and then he built one a little larger called the Barcelona.
Barbara Williams of Buxton recalls Aycock Brown coming to the island to take photographs to promote tourism in the early 1950s.
Aycock Brown would come down and take pictures of us young teenagers. There's me up there that he took.
I noticed that. And so, who was Aycock Brown?
He was a photographer out of Matteo. He took pictures of all of Dare County, trying to promote and build up our island for tourists. And he'd send all these pictures in. Now, when he took that picture, it was freezing cold on January 2nd. And he put in the paper that I forgot how many degrees it was. Real warm. Trying to build this up.
Yeah, you're in your bathing suit there. And that's in January.
January 2nd.
You have a smile on your face, and it looks like it would be warm and sunny and nice.
And when he took my sister's picture, you could see the goosebumps on her legs.
Did he call you ahead of time, or he
No,
just...
we didn't have a lot of phones back then. He would just come down, and he knew where we all lived, and all he had to do was call one, and everybody else would come. I'm pretty sure it was 1952.
Did you get paid for that, or...
No.
No, that wasn't a modeling career?
No.
Okay.
And then he would go over to Miss Maud's house, which was across the street from that store, and he'd go to the store and buy the nicest grapefruits that they had. And then we would all go up and have our picture taken underneath the grapefruit tree. And we would get under that tree and hold that grapefruit up like that, like it had been picked in January.
Oh, that is funny. Jimmy Austin talks about the freight boats that served Hatteras Village. Mr. Austin was interviewed in 2003 by Barbara Garrity Blake for the Cape Hatteras National Seashore Ethnohistory Project. The Outer Banks Community Foundation provided funds to digitize the original recording.
Mr. Fraser Peel and Mr. Tom Eaton on a boat named the Hatteras and Hatteras to Engelhard and carried cars across there. 4 cars.
Okay.
At one time, the Hatteras would carry 3 cars and a Jeep.
Right.
They would carry. There was room up on the bow to put a Jeep. And they would carry them to Engelhard. They'd also carry the fish and crabs to Engelhard or brought them back and forth if they needed to on them.
Ah.
They had another boat Mr. Andrew Austin did named the J.E. Sterling that hauled the groceries and store goods from Elizabeth City.
Right.
The Hatteras would supply the stores with.
Really? So it didn't come from Newbern or Ocracoke or, of course not Ocracoke.
Ocracoke, the only thing come from Ocracoke to Hatteras was the mail.
Okay.
They had a man down there, the first mailman I ever remember was named Ansley O'Neill, and he ran a boat every morning from Ocracoke to Hatteras docks and unloaded the mail for the post office.
Right.
And then they had another old gentleman named Charlie Mack that run a boat for several years, and in late years after they built the ferry there, he had what they called a command car. That was a government World War II vehicle that the Army used. It was called the command car, big 4-wheel drive heavy duty thing.
Yeah.
He ran the mail from Ocracoke to Hatteras with that. Because there wasn't no road on Ocracoke Island, he had to ride the beach. But it was 4-wheel drive.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
He'd bring, every morning he made the ferry with it, brought the mail up and went back.
That's something, isn't it? So, what was the Globe Fish Company?
Globe Fish Company was Elizabeth City.
Okay.
Now, they bought fish on Hatteras Island. Different people through the years packed fish on Hatteras Island for Globe Fish Company. Jethro Midget at Rodanthe for many years packed fish for Globe Fish Company. Might be wrong, but I think Mr. Andrew Austin and some of those in Hatteras Village packed fish for Globe Fish Company. Now, I might stand correct on that.
Bruce and Betty Pritchard discuss hurricanes on Hatteras Island and the phenomenon of the Buxton Bubble. The interview took place February 19, 2014 with Sandy Jones Garrison.
As I tell people, living here on Hatteras Island is wonderful 364 days a year. The other day the hurricane's coming. Put up the shutters and hunker down. Buxton's kind of unique. You know, you've heard of the Buxton Bubble.
Actually, I haven't.
Oh, haven't you?
No, explain that to me.
You've seen it on radar, how storms come and they kind of melt before they get here to Buxton. They go around us.
Okay.
Same thing kind of works with hurricanes. Yeah, they always say hurricanes aim for Cape Hatteras, which is kind of true. There's only been a few cases where the actual eye comes over the island here in Buxton. When they're coming up the coast, they'll duck in, they'll hit land below us and go up the mainland. or they'll aim for us and they'll catch the Gulf Stream and go around. That's not to say we don't get damaging winds. Yeah, we do get bad storms, but the actual eye very rarely will go right over the top of us.
Betty, do you remember the worst one that, since you've been living here, since it was like 2001, is there one that you remember that?
Well, the house was here in '03 when Isabel hit. We have live oaks here, so there's never been water on our property, so they can't sustain life through salt water. We had the shutters up, we weren't here. We have two little holes in the side of the house where a little tree limb had hit the house. It's the only thing that has happened. A couple years ago, we got pretty scared and put up all the shutters. I said when we got the dogs that we had to say that we would leave when a storm was coming, because you always see on the Weather Channel of somebody's dog that swam away. You know, I don't want to be one of those people. I feel as though Bruce is very good at knowing about, he wouldn't put me in harm's way.
We always use ballpark figures as a category. If a category 3 is coming, we might get out. We haven't left yet, though. I thought we made a mistake not last year, Irene, because it looked safe enough. It was a 100-mile-an-hour storm, and just right there it blew up to 145. Rule of thumb is never let the wind inside the house. That's what blows houses up.
Okay.
The wind gets in and...
So you have every door and window covered.
There's a lot of false confidence.
Once you're here, though, and if you leave, you can't get back. That's one of the things that makes me say...
That's why most people, each storm, more and more people won't leave because they have left and couldn't get back.
Irene, when it happened, we could get to the end of Lighthouse Road, and we could almost get down to the old lighthouse site. And we couldn't go any further. So
you can't go up to 12 because the water's running down the street at 12.
So we were all held captive for 9 days here at the house. It was so much fun.
Isabel came in, it came in south of us, so things didn't happen right
Not here, but south of us.
Yeah, look at Hatteras Village.
Right. They got cut off.
And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Irene destroyed everything in Avon. That night, he said to me as we were shutting everything up, he said, I want you to look out back at the sedge. He said, it's not going to look like that tomorrow. Now you scared me. Now I go to bed that night, reaches in his pocket. His driver's license. So what's that for? He says, they can identify the body. Put it back in his pocket and went back to bed.
Virginia O'Neill Scarborough explains why she and her husband Ralph joined St. John's United Methodist Church in Avon, North Carolina in the early 1950s. She was interviewed by Sandy Jones Garrison on March 16, 2015. How long were you a member of the United Methodist Women?
Well, Janice was a baby when I first joined. Then the girl was going to walk around the block that night, and her sister was going to serve refreshments the next night for UMW. And she says, and her sister says, give us a piece of that fruitcake. She said, be here to the meeting tomorrow night. I said, Carson, that was her. I said, Carson, you going to come down and help Ralph babysit in the morning, tomorrow night? He said, well, what y'all got planned? And his wife Beatrice, she said, well, I'll put it this way. We've been promised a piece of the fruitcake, and they promised to give us slush for you and Ralph. We wound up joining that night. And I've been a member ever since.
Yeah.
We went just to get a piece of that fruitcake.
Coastal Voices thanks the storytellers, the community oral historians, and Radio Hatteras for their support. And we thank you for joining us this evening. Good night.